What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to review the Klipsch R50M bookshelf speaker. Now, until I got my hands on these, I had never heard a pair of Klipsch speakers. I had never owned a pair of Klipsch speakers, and on this channel, I've never reviewed a pair of Klipsch speakers. So this is a first in a lot of ways for me, and I'm hyped to tell you guys about it because this is an attractive price point, these bad boys. They MSRP for $399, but they routinely go on sale for under $300, bringing a lot of value to the table. Now, that is a competitive price category, but don't worry, we're going to compare this to other speakers in and around this price, and I'll tell you how they compete. So let's jump into it. Throw the main specs on screen so you guys can check that out. I'll tell you about some standout features and some things I liked about the speaker. I'll tell you what they sound like. As I mentioned, we'll do those comparisons and then we'll wrap up the video. Before we jump into that, anyone looking for an update on my life, the rat is gone. I solved the rat problem. My air conditioner is still broken, unfortunately. So if you hear a little bit of whirring in this video, I've got a ton of fans on because that's the only choice I've got. Back to the speaker, some unique features. Obviously this copper colored cone, bit unique. I know a couple other speakers use a similar color, like, the KEF LS50 Meta, but generally speaking, speaker cones are going to be like white or black or silver. We generally don't see a lot of colors outside of that, so pretty cool touch there. Up top, pretty big horn, and I really like this. I don't know if it was the outgoing model, but there was an older version of this speaker and it had a similar name. And the horn on that model it looked like it was just kind of tacked on. I'll throw a picture on screen so you can see what I mean. That's the outgoing model, I believe. And I thought that looked terrible. It looked cheap. And when I saw Klipsch updated it and pushed that horn all the way to the edge of the speaker, I thought it looked so much nicer. It no longer looks like a cheap product. Hats off to Klipsch, whether it was a sound engineer who made that choice or someone from marketing, I don't know, but it looks so much better and so much just fit and finish. It's just better fit and finish, and I like to see that, especially in the budget category, because oftentimes that's where it's lacking a little bit. Not here. Klipsch, good job on the aesthetics. Out back, it's a standard affair. We've got a port and a pair of binding posts. I don't know why that was a tongue twister, but it is sometimes. And when I say a pair, I just mean a left and a right. I don't mean like a quad for bi-wiring, just a left and a right binding post. So aside from that, they're not necessarily large. The driver looks to be in about 5 1/4. The tweeter is a metal dome tweeter, and the cabinet's not too wide, as you could see. So nice stuff. Oh, you know what? There is one more standout feature, and I really appreciated this. I'll throw a picture on the screen, but on the bottom, there's a cork pad. So if you want to set these on top of a media console, you don't have to worry about the speaker sliding around, scratching your media console, or leaving any marks. A lot of times those rubber footers can leave marks. The cork doesn't. And because it's just a pad, it doesn't get in the way of speaker stands. It was a very intelligent way to address dual duty use. And I did use these upstairs on top of my media console and down here in my listening room on speaker stands. They performed admirably. You know what I'm trying to say. They performed very well, regardless of the usage case. When I was watching TV shows upstairs, dialogue came through clear, details were good. It was just a great speaker for TV duty. I watched some movies down here, and paired with the Klipsch RP1200 SW subwoofer, this was a killer combination, guys. We'll talk more about the sub in a future video, but that combination was so good. Whether I was playing video games, watching anime, watching movies, or even TV shows, honestly, it really all sounded great together. But the R50M, not RP, sorry, the R50M, whether it's movies, TV shows, video games, or music, very good. Let me tell you what it actually sounds like, though. So, on the top end, I was expecting this to be a really bright speaker. That's what I had heard from other people. That's how Klipsch speakers are, especially the ones with the big horns. It's not what's going on here. Not at all. I wouldn't call it a neutral affair. It's just a little bit on the forward side of neutral with good snaps, sparkle, air, and clarity. Good space and separation in the treble region, but it is not aggressive or overly bright in any way. And that didn't, whatever amplifier I connected it to didn't even seem to matter. Because I've got some amps that are a little brighter. I got some amps that are a little bit darker. Guys, I used amplifiers with as little power as the Wrecker amp with just 4 watts in mono mode, all the way up to my Kinky Studio monos with 250 watts a channel. And this speaker paired well with everything. you know, the Galleon TS120 SE, the Hegel H190, the Emotiva TA2, my Kinky Studio stuff, and the Shit Wrecker. The speaker's very flexible with amplification, so whatever you got will be just fine. So as far as the treble goes, you know, definitely on the forward side of neutral, but very easy to listen to at the same time. Good detail, good air, good separation. I really liked the treble, and it seemed to serve very well for music and movie effects. Moving down to the mid-range, mostly neutral, not a lot going on here. It wasn't cool and dry. It wasn't warm, rich, and romantic, just neutral. And when a mid-range is neutral, there's not much else to say, so let's move down to the bass. Moving down to the bass, there's no mid-bass bump. I was happy about that. A lot of times affordable speakers will artificially boost the bass around 50 to 60 hertz to make the speaker sound like it's got a lot of bass, and it just muds up the mid-range. I hate seeing that. We do not have a mid-bass bump here at all. It's a very linear bass response. The bass doesn't extend too low, nor is it incredibly full. It is a small speaker. You know, as I mentioned, this driver's maybe about 5 1/4 inches, right? Generally speaking, smaller, you know, narrow front baffle speakers with small drivers, we're not going to get a ton of bass, but there was enough bass for the music to sound fairly full and tonally accurate, right? Like when a guitar was strummed, there was some body to it. Male vocals had some chestiness to them. The speaker didn't sound thin by any means. However, I absolutely recommend adding a subwoofer. And if it's your first time checking out my channel, I absolutely recommend a subwoofer for 99.9% of speakers, because almost every pair of speakers sounds better with a subwoofer, unless you've got a pair of 600-pound floor standing behemoths that are $25,000 a pair or more, but I digress. So that's what the speakers sound like. And I liked this sound a lot. Let me think if there's anything else I want to tell you before we jump into comparisons. I already told you it paired well with a wide variety of amplifiers, whether it was a little bit of power or a lot of power. Regardless of how the amplifiers were voiced, the speakers always sounded clean and clear and were never overbearing, but still offered tons of clarity, air, and separation. It's time for comparisons. Let's start with the Kanto U Passive. I reviewed that recently. That speaker sells for, I think, $240. This bad boy goes on sale for about $280, so they're pretty similar in price. The Kanto U Passive might be preferred for anyone who's going to listen at ultra low volumes, figure 70 dB or lower, because it is a much brighter speaker. Now, being a much brighter speaker, you start to dig into the volume knob and it could start to become a little bit too much. For that reason, I think the Klipsch R50M is going to be a much easier recommendation from top to bottom. The Kanto U Passive is a good speaker for $240, but the treble quality and refinement is not as good as the Klipsch R50M. The mid-range is not as, I guess you would say, natural sounding as the Klipsch. The Kanto U Passive is a little bit cool in the mid-range. The Klipsch is more neutral. And moving down to the bass, the Kanto U Passive hardly had any at all. The Klipsch was quite a bit more of a fuller sound. So the Klipsch R50M versus the Kanto U Passive, easy win going to the Klipsch R50M. Again, unless you listen under 70 dB, and you're really going to need that much, much brighter top end of the Kanto U Passive. Fit and finish also, by the way, is on a step above with the Klipsch, so hats off to that too. So that's that comparison out of the way. Let's talk about one of my favorite speakers in and around this price category. My number one go-to recommendation for years in the $300-ish price category was the Emotiva B1 Plus. Now, I gotta say, Emotiva's been pretty wonky with the price recently. I've seen them as high as $399. I've seen them as low as $279. I don't know what's going on there. They keep changing the price. So, you know, if you check the price of that speaker and it's different, there's no need to correct me, guys. It fluctuates a lot. But anyways, like I said, that's been one of my go-to recommendations. And it still is, just so we're clear. But the Klipsch R50M is going to be a strong competitor, and it's going to be recommended very often going forward because it does a lot of things in different ways. So let's do the comparison. The Emotiva B1 Plus uses a AMT tweeter, so its top end is going to be a little bit different. For top end, this is what I'll say. Generally speaking, this is what I believe. If you're a fan of AMT tweeters, you're generally going to prefer the speaker with the AMT tweeter. And if you're a fan of domes, which the Klipsch has, then you're probably going to prefer the sound of the dome. So I could sit here and tell you what the treble difference is between the two speakers, but it's really just going to come down to which sound you prefer. The Emotiva B1 Plus has a good amount of space, air, and separation. It's a little bit more on the forward side of neutral than the R50M is, but the R50M also has a good amount of like spatial separation and airiness and clarity to it. So as far as technical capabilities, both treble regions on both speakers are very good and a little bit similar, with the Emotiva being just a little bit more forward. The difference is in that way that AMT presents treble versus the Dome. It's a very difficult thing to explain, and I don't feel like doing it, so we're not going to, and we're just going to move down to the mid-range. The mid-range is where the two speakers start to become very different. The Emotiva B1 Plus is a little bit of a V-curve speaker, meaning the mid-range is a little bit recessed. The Klipsch R50M is very neutral in the mid-range, so it's going to be a lot more natural sounding. Those female and male vocals are going to project more into the room, and they're going to have a little bit of a larger sense of scale and more realism to them. Moving down to the bass portion of the two speakers, again, this is where they start to become more different. Again, the Emotiva B1 Plus is just a bit bass boosted, meaning it's going to have a fuller and more confident sound than the R50M with its more linear bass. As far as bass quality goes, I would say the R50M's bass quality was just a little bit better. The Emotiva B1 Plus's bass quantity was just a little bit better. So I'll put it to you like this. Both speakers are really good, but going forward, the Klipsch R50M is going to be among my top recommendations if someone's shopping in and around $300. This is what I would say. In and around $300, if you're looking for more of a V-curve sound, you go for the Emotiva. You're looking for a more linear sound, but you still want that open, clear top end, you're going to go for the Klipsch. It's just that simple. Let's see, what else can we compare this to? Let's do the Project Speaker Box 5. That's $350. This speaker's MSRP is $400, sometimes goes on sale for under $300, so it's kind of right in there. The biggest selling point of the Project Speaker Box 5, in my opinion, is going to be its size and aesthetics. It's finished in gloss paint, which is just absolutely unheard of in and around this price category. So if you need something with an insanely high wife acceptance factor, or something that's just going to look amazingly good in a modern home, or, you know, off to the side somewhere, the Project Speaker Box 5 is great for that. It's not going to draw attention to itself visually because it's small, and if it does, it's going to look great with that painted finish. And that's mostly what you're paying for, in my opinion, because as far as the sound goes, look, from top to bottom, the Klipsch R50M is on a higher level. Put it to you like this. Let's do it traditionally. So as far as treble goes, the Project Speaker Box 5 is a little bit more forward than the Klipsch is, but it's also more gritty, whereas the Klipsch R50M is a lot more refined in its treble region. Both speakers have a good amount of air, detail, and separation, but like I said, the Project Speaker Box 5 could be a little bit harsh. It could be a little bit gritty. It could be a little bit too much of a good thing sometimes. Whereas again, the Klipsch R50M speakers is just a more refined treble presentation overall. Moving down to the mid-range, the Project Speaker Box 5 is not a V-curve speaker, but it just does not have enough bass to give that mid-range a sense of realism unless you really push it up against the wall. Whereas the much larger R50Ms, you know, look, the R50M is not a large speaker, but it is much larger than the Project Speaker Box 5. So the R50M's just going to have a much fuller sound in the mid-range, giving you more of a sense of realism. Moving down to the bass, the Project Speaker Box 5 has none. It just at all, completely lacking. Figure like 70 hertz and below, it just falls off. So the R50M is a much stronger and fuller sound in the bass region overall. I would say it's this simple. If you're just simply looking for the better sound, it's going to be the Klipsch R50M by a long shot. And if you just, you know, sound is not so much of a factor, maybe it's just going to be played in the background or something like that, then the Project Speaker Box 5 is going to be better for that more aesthetically pleasing look. Let's see. Let's do one more comparison and then we'll wrap it up, because like 4 is a lot and we're about to do the 4th one. So let's talk about my absolute favorite, my new favorite speaker in and around this price point. It's a little bit more expensive, but the Hecko Aurora 300. This is a champion at $419. It is my favorite at $419. The Klipsch is $399 MSRP. So MSRP, you know, they're even, but the Klipsch sells for under $300 when it's on sale. Let's do the comparison. I think both speakers have the same parent company, so this is going to be an interesting one, but who cares about that? So they're totally different sounds, so this is actually a really easy comparison. If you're looking for the more warm and tonally rich sound, you're going to go for the Hecko Aurora 300. It's just that simple. Both speakers are really easy to drive, but the Hecko Aurora 300 is a much warmer sound. The treble's going to be darker, where the Klipsch is going to be a little bit on the forward side of neutral. They're both going to have good air and separation. Obviously, the more, treble forward Klipsch is going to be, it's going to have a little bit more air, a little bit more separation, a little bit more sparkle to it. But the darker Hecko Aurora 300 still sounds plenty clean and clear. Moving down to the mid-range where the Klipsch is very neutral, the Hecko Aurora 300 is going to be, by direct comparison, it's going to be more romantic, warm, tonally rich, and so on. The mid-range of the Hecko Aurora 300 is fantastic for its price category. Moving down to the bass, the Hecko Aurora 300 is a larger speaker. It's going to have fuller bass, more confident bass. It's going to sound just bigger overall compared to the smaller driver on the Klipsch R50M. So I would say this is a case of one speaker is not necessarily better than the other. They're very, very different sounds. You want that more open air, airy, clarity-focused presentation that's going to be mostly neutral. Go for the Klipsch. You want that warmer, tonally rich presentation. The Hecko Aurora 300 is just absolutely unbeatable at $419. And I think that wraps up the comparisons. If you want to see more comparisons, sometimes, not always, but sometimes, I'll have written articles in my Discord where I do more comparisons, especially if a lot of people ask for it. But I think we covered most of the major players. I'm trying to think just real quick if there's anything in and around this price I might have left out that's fairly popular. I know some of you guys are going to ask about ELAC. I'm going to keep it simple, guys. I know ELAC got a lot of hype early on as being just this killer budget performer. I'm not in that camp. I don't personally believe that. I like their more expensive stuff, like the DBR62 and up, but I don't like any of their debut stuff. I don't think it's that good unless you're running really high-end amplification to it, and then it's just, that's pointless. You know what I mean? So, but even with that, like the debut 5.2, for example, it can't compete with this Klipsch R50M. I would take this Klipsch R50M over anything ELAC makes under $500 all day long, just without question. Yeah, I think that wraps up the comparisons, guys. If you have any questions, this channel does have a free Discord. If you join the free Discord, be kind and courteous and polite to your fellow audio lovers. It's not a place to flex your ego or try to be some kind of know-it-all. It's definitely not a place to tell someone the room would sound better if it had a rug in it. We all know that. We don't all want rugs in our room though, so let it go. What else? I did mention briefly, I think the Klipsch RP1200 SW subwoofer. We will review that in the future. I'll give you a little bit of a sneak peek though. It's good. It can pound. It's got a big sense of scale. It's a strong, competent performer, and yeah, it's very good. There's probably going to be an early impression of that RP1200 SW posted in my Discord, maybe in a week or two, I think. I've only put a few hours on it so far, but I really enjoyed it so far. It's not small either. It's got a properly sized cabinet. There is a smaller 10-inch model if the 12's too big, but yeah, we'll talk more about it later. All right, guys, that wraps up the video. Let me know if you've got any questions in the comments below or on my free Discord. Until next time, later.